Welcome to episode 2 of University and Everything in Between. If you watched last week's episode with me and Dylan, we covered plenty of topics from graduating at university and all the freshers experience. And if you watched that, it should now be available on all the streaming services and all that stuff. So just to introduce what we are doing with this podcast once more, in case you are watching it for the first time, this is all about finding interesting stories, talking to interesting people, finding out things that might help you when you start university, and, you know, maybe some cautionary tales of things not to do that can go wrong. And there's a wry smile from Chelsie, so I think we're gonna maybe have some cautionary tales, but it's I'm very excited to be joined. I'm really glad that you've taken the time out of your day, because obviously, you know, nowadays it's quite uncertain about what you're doing from one day to the next, but it's really good to have you on. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's fun. We are going to be. I've structured this in an interesting way that later on in this episode we're going to have a good old rant. I'm gonna have a good old rant because I figured, why not? It's about time. There's some things that the University of York specifically doesn't do very well, and there's some things that it does really well. So I thought we could have a bit of a rant. Some of the other topics that we are going to be covering in this episode as well is talking about you and your experience of the last 3 years of uni, because just like Dylan, you're also a graduate going on to do new and amazing things, which is exciting. And also the importance, I want to talk a bit about like working whilst at uni and the importance of like work experience, whether it's needed. And then towards the end, we'll have a little bit of a chat about music and whatever else I can come up with. We've got plenty to talk
Sounds
about.
good.
Yeah.
I feel like I've got 3 years to unpack here, so...
Hopefully good and bad. Good and bad, that's what we want.
Of course, always is.
Yeah. Obviously, as I said, you're a recent graduate, which must be exciting and scary. Is it a bit of both?
It is a bit of both. It's just weird not having anything to do. Like,
yeah.
I'm free as a bird, you know? And it is weird. It's a weird feeling.
I can imagine. Because obviously doing YouTube as a part of being at uni as well, is your time and focus going more into doing YouTube and bits
Definitely,
like that?
yeah. Especially throughout like the early days of lockdown when I was like, I have more time now. That's when I was like, I'm going to start uploading twice a week. And I've just carried that on really. So it's good that I do have that extra time to like put into YouTube in that way and think of more ideas and sort of just get a bit more creative with it.
Yeah.
But it is also weird like not being able to do uni vlogs and stuff that I would have done when I was at uni.
Was uni vlogs something that was like a lot of fun to do? Because I've never vlogged, but it looks like it's quite an intensive process. Like it doesn't look like it, you know, from an outsider's perspective, you think, oh, that's quite cool. But like as a person who actually does it, like it must be quite intense.
It is and it isn't. Like if you have a good week where you feel like there's enough going on each day, but then you have little breaks where you can like figure out how you want to film stuff, how you want to edit it, it's fine. It's the weeks, and I always chose the really packed weeks. So I thought it's going to be better content, and then you wouldn't really have time for a break. So it was literally just like running about, like vlogging, and it was just, it gets kind of like, it is quite intense because sometimes you just want half an hour to just be like,
just relax,
just have a little lie down or relax.
Yeah.
Like, I have to have a camera.
Just put the camera down.
It's all good fun, really.
Oh, it sounds fun. Do you? We're going to talk a bit about YouTube and then move on to something different. But do you like actively go out to try and do things that are a bit like quirky and out there just so you can film it, or is it more just like it's the other way around? You already are doing things that are fun and interesting, and you just so happen to be filming.
I would like to think I'm already doing things that are fun and interesting. I would think, to be honest, most of the stuff that I do, I just then think, oh, this would be quite cool to film. I mean, there are certain videos where I think, oh, I'm probably going to go out of my way to do this because it'll be good content. But they're more of the advice videos where I'm thinking, let's go to like on campus and film something about accommodation, whereas I wouldn't really be doing that on my like Thursday afternoon. But, you know, most of the stuff I do is just because I'm doing it anyway, you know.
Yeah. I really liked one of your recent videos, actually, where you threw like an at-home graduation party, and I was like, and the homemade hat was brilliant.
Well, Was it? Yeah, because I always was I'm looking at it on my shelf up there and I'm like, is it? Maybe it looks a bit better on camera. But no, that was one of those things that in my head I had this planned because I was like, well, I'm not getting a graduation. This will be quite a fun idea. But those type of videos I always find are either make or break. Like I could do it and it could be a bit like, oh, like, is this funny? Is it interesting?
I thought it was really funny.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah, like mission accomplished. But this is about to turn into the Graham Norton show. Could you grab the hat so I could see it?
I can grab the hat. Okay.
Because I don't know if you watch Graham Norton, but he's doing a lot of stuff in lockdown where he speaks to a lot of the Marvel cast and gets them all to show him like props from the film set. So this is kind of like that. Here we go, prop from the Chelsie film set.
Before we show the hat, that it sat on a shelf for a good few weeks, and I think it's aged quite a bit. But like, here we go.
Oh, it's drooping.
Yeah.
Oh, but it looks fantastic. See, I think that's what YouTube is about. It's like pure creativity. That is brilliant.
And just too much time on our hands, yeah.
Exactly. It's brilliant. Did you enjoy making that video, or was it quite a lot of fun?
I had, honestly, the most fun I've had in a very long time making that video. Probably a bit too much fun. And especially just because it's like, I get to live out my creative idea in my head, because before I film videos, I kind of like see it in my head as if I'm watching a film. So I just then create it as I'm sort of seeing it. And sometimes it doesn't live up to the expectation, but sometimes it's better. And it's like when I was especially making the hat, I thought, ooh, I'm not very good at arts and crafts here. I don't know how this is going to go. I have this big vision that it's going to turn out. And then I was like, oh, but I feel like I did it right.
I think a lot of people can relate to that, like starting something with expectations and you get to what you've made, it's like, oh God, why did I do that? But you're
like, let's just buy one, you know?
Yeah. How much do they cost? How much does... Because obviously, did you have to buy one? You didn't have to buy one, did you?
No, thankfully, no.
How much does a graduation gown cost?
They are quite expensive, I think. I remember there's different figures, but like to rent one, I don't know, the cost of graduation I've heard is something about £100, £200. But like, I never know what those figures are for. I just know you have to rent them.
And it only really has one use, doesn't it? Like, you're not going to wear it any other time.
Just around the house, you know? Getting my post, that type of thing. But it's like, especially for York, they have their own colours. So my colours, I think, would have been purple and grey. So it's like I can't even wear it when I do my masters.
I'm not sure I like the colour scheme, I'm not going to lie.
No, I'm not exactly on it either.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe I'm like heavily influenced by popular culture and seeing like the classic black gown, but I'm not sure if that's just American like. No,
because my master's at King's College London, and there they have black gowns. I'm just like, yes, finally at graduation, I'm gonna go get the photos. Yeah. You just skip
straight through that. It's like a lucky break almost. But no, like obviously it is a bit of a shame that being able to experience that graduation in person at the Uni of York is a bit of a like anticlimax. And I was speaking to that with Dylan last week, and he said the same. Did it at all make up for it doing that video? And was the people's responses what you thought it would be? Because I kind of gauged that you were a bit cautious about whether it was going to be.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was going to flop or not. Yeah, for sure. And I think it did kind of not necessarily make up for the day, but it gave me something to have that was similar to the day. And if anything, I almost think that my day where I filmed that was in a way probably more fun, because there was less waiting around.
More fun than the actual
have all of your lecturers there. You know what I mean? Like, it's just me and like doing what I want to do. It's not, this is like a strung out day, because graduation in itself, I think, is a lot of waiting around. And it's good to see everybody, but at the same time, it's like standing in a room with 400 people or whatever, just like, whereas, yeah, the reactions were good, to be fair, like, because it's quite different to what I normally do. I normally do vlogs and advice videos. I was like, this is a bit more wacky.
You went outside of the box a bit more.
Yeah, and I remember when I first posted it, one of the first comments on there was like, this is a very different video. And I thought, oh God, people hate it. And then it did okay. And I was like, oh, it's okay, people like it.
It's like, who is this person?
Yeah, exactly.
But like, when I graduate next year, I hope to God I'm not thinking, Christ, Chelsie had it right. I should have done it at home and made a graduation hat myself. And
can always do that too.
Yeah, I could do a double bill for sure. But when I was doing a bit of research, obviously, about your degree and the things that people do around that, it surprised me so much that there's so many of these degrees where people do things like politics and law and history, and they go on to want to do something completely different. And it just strikes me as confusing.
Sure,
But
yeah.
also what strikes me as confusing is how you seem to be so passionate about filming and about YouTube and about creativity that you don't want to go on to do more of that, or is it more just like that the safe I'm going to say that with inverted commas, like the safe career path is going to do a master's and going to major in something else. What do you think about that?
I mean, I would absolutely love to do YouTube full time and make this like more of my job, but it's one of those things that it's so out of my control that if I could sit here, and say that I'm going to do it, and then it could take years, it could take months, like there's no way for me to control how that could then become an income.
Yeah.
So it is more of the safe route, but I think the beauty of the safe route is that if I do more study, it is in something that I am genuinely interested and passionate about, but it also provides content for me to do YouTube. So it's kind of like two birds, one stone. And I think that if in 5 years' time I get another degree and then I'm like, oh, actually, I'm not going to use it, I'm just going to do YouTube full time, at least I have that degree and I've had those experiences. So I kind of, it was like,
oh, that was fun.
Yeah, back to YouTube, yeah.
Are you planning to keep doing it while you're at King's College London?
For sure, I'm planning to do it for however long people watch my videos for, really.
However
That's
long
5,
you can.
10 years, 20 years. Yeah, I'm going to keep going. I mean, I really enjoy it. So I think, especially when you have a hobby that like you can really enjoy and you get good opportunities from and it's fun to do, you just got to keep going with it,
Yeah. I'm a bit out of the loop in terms of what a master's actually is. So could you try and explain it to me?
You'll be like, oh, panic masters.
Oh God, yeah. No, I said this to Dylan last weekend, that I genuinely don't want to graduate uni yet. To the extent that I might this is totally just a joke and not going to do it, but like consider. Yeah, I say that now. Consider doing a position in USU just to stay at York for like another year, because my degree doesn't do 4 years. So that is a real existential crisis. But like, what is the point of doing a master's? That's what I'm trying to get at. Like, what?
That is a very good question. I mean, I suppose it really depends on like the person. I think a lot of people probably will be in your boat where they just want another year before they have to figure out what jobs they want to do. Yeah. So you have no idea. Some people want more academic study to niche in their area. And that's definitely something that I wanted to do. I was like, I really want a year at a different uni, especially going back to London, and just to study something I'm really interested in, but I haven't really got to study on my undergrad.
Right.
And it's like that whole new uni experience again, it's like I get to do all different societies that I didn't do when I was in York, and all the things I think, oh, I wish I'd done that in York, I can just go and do my master's.
That's pretty cool, actually. And I mean, do you live in London? Or do you live...
I lived in London when I was doing like my sixth form years, college years. So like I'm used to London, and I go back in the summers and stuff. So I'm very familiar with London, so I'm very keen to get back.
Yeah. So it's not completely like brand new environment and throwing you out.
No, for sure.
Would you recommend that I mean, as much as you can, that someone after they graduate take that, real leap to go study somewhere like, Edinburgh or London or for a master's? Do you think that is a good idea? Does it build character, do you think?
I think it definitely builds character, but I think it ultimately depends what they want. So if you just want to like study for the sake of studying just to have a bit more time rather than be unemployed, then I don't really think you need to go further afield. I think I'm always an advocate that go to the uni that you really want to go to and that has the course that you want. Like for me with my course, there was like 3 universities that offered it, so I was a bit slim pickings really.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot.
And funny enough, one of them was Edinburgh, one was London, so it was a case of going further afield. But then it depends what location you want to be in for a year as well. Like if you want to be further away and experience a new culture or whatever, go further afield, go abroad, But
what made you choose out of all the options that you just threw out there that I somehow managed to like deduce? What made you choose York? Like, there's nothing wrong with York, but like Edinburgh and London sound pretty exciting.
Well, yeah. For my undergrad, York. I mean, York wasn't actually my first choice.
I didn't think it would. I was waiting for you to say that.
Yeah, no. I applied to like 4 Russell groups and then Surrey Uni, being very bold at 17, thinking, oh,
take on the world.
Yeah, and then I really, really wanted to get to Bristol, but for law you have to do the LNAT, which is like, I don't know, it's like a test, admissions test, and it's hard. It's very like critical thinking, and it just wasn't for me. And like I did okay on it, but Bristol that year had loads of people doing like really good on it, so they were like, nah. And then it was a case of like Surrey or York, and I was like, well, York's the Russell Group, so safe bet, you know.
Yeah.
It's gonna have more funding and better research facilities, so I was like, we'll go York.
I mean, I don't think you look back on it and regret, do you? Like, I think York's fantastic, and I've not finished yet.
No, I don't regret it. I think it's because the people ask me that a lot when they say like, would you, in hindsight, go back and go anywhere else, or would you have done a different course? Or I'm like, no, to be honest, especially given my circumstances of that, I did a BTEC in film and TV before I went on to do a law degree. Yeah.
Oh my god, we can relate to that. I've done that. I didn't do a BTEC, but I A-leveled in media, which was basically just English lit for films. It's about the same.
Yeah, no, my BTEC was literally just being in the TV studio 3 days a week and then occasionally writing an essay. That was my 2 years. I had a great time.
Sounds like a dream.
I know, right? And then went to law.
What is going on? There's so much chaotic energy coming off you.
I know, right? But I feel like that course I couldn't really apply it many places with that course because a lot of, Russell Group unis doing law were like, we want A-levels, which fair enough, So out of the options, I feel like York was my best bet. And I remember when I looked around for my interview, because I didn't come to York until I had my interview. I didn't go to any.
You've never been?
No. York. I was like, Google Maps, that looks all right. Yeah,
where's York? Oh, there it is. Never honestly, heard of that before.
I didn't even know where York was until I think the summer before I applied to university, and I was going to Newcastle for a Catfish and the Bottomland concert.
Classic.
And I know, right? And then I was like, oh, sign, York. Oh, it's up this way. Lovely. But I'd never been other than that. But when I came for my interview, I looked around the city and saw the Minster and stuff, and I was like, oh, it's really nice, actually. I really like it. I fell in love with it a bit. Yeah,
York must hold a special place in your heart now. Like, I think it does for a lot of people who go there. It's just such a great place. I love it. It's so good.
I'm quite a keen runner too. So when I go running around the campuses, I'm like, oh, those memories, So it does hold quite a good place in my heart. Yeah. I feel like when we eventually get a graduation, whenever that'll be, 2021, 2025, I have no idea, that I'll come back and have a little sightseeing weekend.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to just come back for a graduation. York does exist all times of the year.
Just pop back every weekend.
But like, York graduation for sure. Like, you could end up getting an in-person graduation when you finish your masters. That's a scary thought. But I wanted to talk a little bit about like student loans, which I'm I'm expecting like a knee-jerk reaction of like, oh god, don't mention that.
Don't mention it. For sure.
You have to do another one, don't you, for your masters, I'm guessing. Which, is that a scary thought? And then my follow-up question was going to be on the lines of, does debt make you nervous, / do you see university as an investment? Like,
okay, yeah, I very much do find it as an investment, and I do think it's worth getting in debt for. But I know it sounds bad, and I think a lot of students might share this when we say like, I don't really feel like I'm in debt. Like, I don't really, it's not like a debt collector's coming along every weekend being like, you're 70 grand in debt from your uni and masters.
Pay up.
That's what it is. It's bad.
Just like walks in, like, takes your sofa and TV.
Yeah, exactly. If that was the situation, yeah, I'd be a bit more worried about it. But the fact that, you pay it off and you get a job, and that'll be probably a while for me yet because I've got more studying to do. I feel like it's all up in the ether. It's not here
not to
yet,
worry about.
Yeah, and I think when you do pay it back, the rates are really good, so it's worth it. And considering how much more money you would get doing a degree typically than not, I think it is just worth getting in debt for.
Yeah. There we have it. That's the headline. Chelsie, it's worth getting in debt for.
Student loans. No tagline there. Yeah.
No, I respect that, to be fair. If there is anything as such that can be called safe debt, I reckon that's probably it. And I mean, there's plenty of like academics and things that advocate getting as much like student loan as you can, because it's like
rack it up.
Yeah, rack it up because it's only proportional. You pay back a certain amount and it stays fixed for like the entire time you work, and only goes over if you earn over like, what's it, £20,000 or 21 or 19?
25, I think it
25,
is.
Yeah. It's a number in that range.
You don't even pay it back under that. Yeah.
Exactly. So it sounds like a win-win scenario in a sense.
It is, yeah.
Because you get quite a lot out of it. But in terms of like what you get out of it for that money, because obviously at the end of the day, you're paying that because you want to get something back. Do you feel like the last 3 years of York, you've got something more out of it than just the degree? Because I feel like that's what you should be going to uni for at the end of the day.
Definitely. I feel like in a way, the degree in the education side is probably one of the minimal things that I've got back. I feel like I've got so much more back in terms of like friends that I've met and experiences and societies I've joined, but also like, I mean, you'll probably share this I feel like I've changed a lot as a person in my 3 years here. I kind of come more about my shell and found out who I am more. Yeah. And I think that's invaluable.
I know who I am now, everyone.
I know who I am. Exactly. So it's worth it, I think, for sure. And I have got a lot back from it other than a good education.
Yeah, I'm interested to share some experiences that perhaps have really stuck out across the last 3 years. Something in terms of a skill, though, that I think you really develop at uni if you really put yourself out there is like being a good communicator. Because a lot of what I do is like involved with working in teams and things to kick off events. So I feel like a good trait that I think I've grown, I mean, I'm talking very much like from a biased perspective of myself, but is being a good communicator and working effectively in teams. Have you had any sort of like things that really stand out for the last 3 years that maybe you're really proud of doing? I know you're quite active in societies as well and things. Did you have any?
Yeah, I think probably one of the main things that stand out is I now know what I want to do as a career, because I went into law thinking I wanted to do law, and then I tried literally everything going. I did work experience pretty much every other week to just figure out what I wanted, but each work experience opportunity gave me more information about what I did and didn't like in a job and work environment and me, what I'd want, and those things are then I can carry forward and go, well, in the future this is exactly what I want from my life and what I would want from my life in 10 years. So I think for me that's probably one of the main things that stand out.
Fair enough. But, yeah, I mean, You get a lot out of doing work experience, I can imagine. We're going to talk about later on about the importance of work experience and whether we need it. Is it a tangible thing?
Exactly.
But yeah, like my experience is very much from the aspect of things the uni provides in terms of the societies, that what I've been able to do. Because I do University Radio York. There's a plug. It's going to get lots of plugs across this podcast because I just love it, and I owe a lot of my experiences to that. Managing teams, and I would definitely recommend if anyone is planning to really push and get as much out of it as they can. And I know you've been on University Radio York. Was your experience of being on University Radio York as good as I expect it should be?
Yeah, no, I was about to say that to like beef up your plug a bit, but yeah, I went on in my final year and I really loved it. I had a great time. Yeah,
it's such a good society. It's so much fun. You met Chess Warren, didn't you?
Yeah. If I knew about that in my first year, I would have hopped straight on it.
It's so much fun. I mean, just to plug it a bit more about some of the things that I've done, because why not?
Exactly, why not?
One of the most fun things that I've ever did with URY is run music festivals. Like, we got the opportunity to run a acoustic festival stage at Freshers Festival last year, and it was near the main stage. Did you ever go to Freshers Festival in your
I didn't.
3 years?
I was in my first year. I don't recall Freshers Week. I think that's probably best. And in the last 2 years, I was like committee and then sticking. So I think when it gets to the end of the week when the festival is, I'm like, please lay me to bed. I can't do it.
You just out of it.
I mean, curious to know what it's like, because I've never been to it.
It's. I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna sugarcoat the bits that URY did, but the festival as a whole, it's a bit odd. It is a bit odd because it's like the university's trying very hard to make this be like a cool event, but it's like
Glastonbury.
Yeah, it's like a little Glastonbury, but there is obviously, of course, a limit to the scale of artists that they can get involved.
Yeah.
So it is just a lot of like random Yusu DJs, and then there's like one good final act that's a bit like, it's not amazing, but it can sort of
them-ish.
Yeah, you know of them. They won X Factor like 5 years ago or something. It's like I think that and then Good Fest as well. If you've heard of that, they had Tinchy Strider on.
I really wanted to go to that, and I don't know why. Was it last year that happened?
It was, yeah.
And
Summer,
I don't remember
summer
why I didn't
2019.
go. But I remember seeing people sent me videos of it, and I was like, yeah, did you?
Oh, it was the best day. It was the best day.
Yeah.
My mate was the photographer for that festival. And he was doing a pretty good job the whole day, you know, photographing all the acts that build up to obviously the main event, Tinchy.
Yeah.
But he, when Tinchy was on the stage performing his set, I think it was about halfway through, and I don't know what he was doing, but he got distracted by something. I don't know why he wasn't taking pictures of Tinchy either. He was taking pictures of the crowd or something, and he was running across the stage behind Tinchy, and Tinchy just launches himself backwards and accidentally clatters them both into each other, and everyone was just like, because we knew him, not everyone knew the photographer, but we were like absolutely roasting him afterwards.
Makes it just that much more funny, yeah.
that he'd done that, but it was like, I think that's a funny story that you got to tell down the pub.
Got taken down by Tinchy Strider, yeah.
Yeah. Highlight of his career. I don't think he's done anything for like 10 years. But that is basically uni festivals in a nutshell. They're fantastic, but it's just filled with artists who probably haven't done anything in like 10 or 12 years.
Yeah.
Because USU's budget aren't amazing at the moment.
But I feel like it's the people though. If you go with a good group of mates and you're in a good vibe, then
absolutely,
it's
good.
It's
Honestly, back to the URY bit. Obviously, we got to host the stage there, and it was my job to MC it, which I'd never ever done in my life. It was terrifying, but also I had to book the artists and coordinate when they were coming on and off the stage, and that is some of my best experiences of uni. Like, I've got a video of like 100+ strong crowd in front of this stage that I've set up, and they've all got their phone torches out, just shining their phone torches to this song by Adele that this guy's playing, and it's just a magical moment. It was fantastic.
Yeah, no, for sure.
It was really good. But that is, not to put too fine a point on it, why you should have gone to Freshers Festival.
I should have. If they have one at my masters, maybe I'll go.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and that's a shout out to anyone listening that, you know, is considering what to do when you get to that summer point, and you know there's festivals on. This will probably be more next year than this year, but I would absolutely say get tickets to these USU events and the student union events for wherever you're going, because there was a comedy festival that USU put on as well that I went to with some mates, and it was Joel Dom, the guy from I'm a Celebrity. He was like Joel Dommett or something, or Joel Dermot.
I know who you mean, yeah.
Yeah,
I know who you mean, but I can't think for the life of me what he's been on. But yeah, he is quite
yeah,
funny,
exactly. I think that, in a
Sorry,
word.
Joel, but yeah.
I think that, but USU hosted that last year as well, and I was surprised. That was genuinely hilarious. It was topped off by the fact that when we were leaving, we bumped into him outside Central Hall, and then
places.
Yeah, and then my mate hounded him for a photo, and then I was the one taking the photo, and I forgot to turn my flash off, so the photo is literally just Joel stood there with his eyes like as the flash just explodes. Yeah. And I don't think they were prepared for that.
Yeah. Fair play for hunting him down for a photo, though. I would have done the same thing.
We did not hunt it. Let me just make that clear. We did not hunt him down. We bumped into him. Okay, we
happened to find him in a crowd.
Yeah, we definitely weren't stalking him. No, that's funny. It was a really random event, but yeah, definitely encourage people, if you are sort of wondering what to do during that week. There is way more to do than just drink. I mean, I don't know what your opinion is on said drinking. Do you like what's your favourite? What would you say that you'd go to?
Cider, probably.
Oh, I'm a cider person as well.
Oh, that's great then. Good start.
Oh, yeah, I know.
But other than that, I'd probably say it's whiskey or cider. They're my two things. I'm not really like a beer or one. But I can't really drink. I say I don't drink, it's because I can't drink. I am the type that I can have like practically smell cider and I'm drunk.
And you
don't. Yeah.
But so that makes a cheap night out.
It does, but then I sober up. So people are 2 drinks in and I'm like, I'm ready to go home. McDonald's burger and let's go home.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like I normally don't drink. So then like I can last the night. But I'm kind of getting used to the older I get, make that sound like I'm properly old, but like the older I get, the more I can have a really good night out and just not drink.
Yeah, I mean,
wake up the next day, you feel foul.
yeah. You don't need to drink to enjoy
Exactly.
yourself. Is what you're trying to say. Not to put words in your mouth, of course. But I think
that
that's
is essentially it.
Yeah. So I'm going to be talking to plenty of first and second years to give us that extra perspective about what they're closer, because they've just gone through that first year, and a lot of the York sort of like drinking scene and going out is dying. It is like, to put it in a finer point, it is dying. And I'm exceptionally worried about what the local music scene is going to turn into, with, because Fulford Arms is a huge venue for local music, and bands come there and play there all the time. And it worries me that it's going to take a big hit, and there's going to be a real lack of like new music coming up through York. Because one of the biggest York bands, who came from York, is a band called Shed 7. Have you ever heard of Shed 7?
No, I haven't actually.
I would definitely recommend you check them out. They're awesome. They're such a good rock band. I mean, I don't know what kind of music you like, and we're going to talk about your music later on. But yeah, they're such a good rock band, and they came from York. But it's cool. that idea of with the sort of lack of opportunity for bands to perform in live scenarios to crowds and things and audiences. Will that result in sort of like a drain in new talent? I think it will.
I think it might, yeah. But it might also be an insurgence of people coming to these shows because there's no nightclubs anymore.
Yeah. I mean, there is sort of, a good side and a bad side. Like, it might encourage people to stop going clubbing.
Exactly.
Not out of choice, but out of, like, lack of opportunity.
Yeah.
But I hope it doesn't come to that. And the York music scene, the vibrant York music scene keeps chugging on, because it is a great place for music, and I hope I've faith that it won't. So I'm gonna now move on to talk about things that I think you can provide me with some of these tips and advice, because I'm looking for now 5 things that you see. 5, I know it's a lot. It's turning into a proper like YouTube video here. Like things that changed your experience at uni for the better, if you know what I mean. Like little things or big things. Like for me, it was, like to begin with, it was doing like shops together with like a group of people, like batch ordering food. The drawback to that was we all realised we were ordering too much of the same thing, and then ended up having like a fridge full of like 5 broccolis that we didn't want to use. So, I mean, do you have a few things that you maybe suggest that to make from your experience
uni life easier? I think for me it was, especially around the topic of people, it's just literally speaking to every person that I saw, especially in the first 3 weeks at uni. I remember in Freshers Week, every time we'd have the bus to go into town or to an event or whatever, it'd be like, hi, who are you? Add me on Snapchat, da da da. But all those people I actually still speak to, like now 3 years on. So that really made my life a lot easier, I think, just like throwing myself out there and having all those connections, and then you can sort of see who is your type of person. And I think there's quite a pressure almost in Freshers Week to just find people and then stay with them for the week and then figure it out later,
and then stay them. Yeah. And that's what I felt as well.
Yeah. And
do you think there's a cut-off point where you feel like after a certain amount of time you almost can't find new people?
Who you have. Yeah. I kind of think yes, I know. Like if you live in halls, like for the first year, like if you stick with everyone in your halls for that year, you're probably stuck with them for the rest of the year. But then,
definitely, yeah.
But there's always opportunities to, I think, join societies and stuff like that. Like in my 3rd year, I joined the Constantine Running Club in January, so I just didn't even do it in the first term. I have no idea why. I think I was just too busy. But then you can join stuff mid-year, meet new people, and there's always a way, I think, to like find and meet new people at uni. So
sport, I think is a good like way in to get to find and meet new people, and you're probably going to have things in common if you're doing the same thing. I'm guessing you found quite a lot of people that you enjoyed speaking to at the Constantine Running Club. Literally,
we would just run round and have a good old natter as we went. We barely did the running. It was basically just talking the whole time.
Yeah, it wasn't for the running.
It wasn't for the running, no. But I think the good thing about sports is that it has like the both sides of, you have the socials as well as the actual sport side. So if you are into your sport, you can also then go out with them, you know, in the week as well. And there's that whole culture as well on like Wednesdays, the big sports, it's just a sports night, everyone goes
big sports
out.
night.
Yeah. So I think, you know, it's a good thing to be a part of if you do a sports team as well.
I think the sports night on a Wednesday sort of frightens the rest of the university into not going out that
Very
night.
much does, yeah.
Yeah.
Just loads of
'Cause I
rugby
haven't
boys
heard-
with their ties on and salvations or whatever, and you think, I'll give it a miss. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit intimidating.
Intense, yeah.
I haven't heard of many people going out on a Wednesday night if they're not in a sports club.
No, I haven't actually. I've done it the odd time here and there when it's someone's birthday, and it's just the whole room is just filled with like university sport uniforms. And you're like, I am the least sporty person here, okay. Yeah.
You feel like a minority for the first time in your life. Yeah, I mean, there is that. I've heard stories of like them all being a bit mental, which maybe is true, maybe is just an exaggeration. But yeah, I have heard some interesting stories. A few things that I personally found really useful in like more sort of earlier. I feel like these are bits of tips are more sort of like useful early on. Is like the college meals. I found really useful. I wasn't fully catered, so I did have the added pressure of having to cook myself. But college meals I found really useful because it's just that like one day of the week where you just don't have to really worry. And they had this thing where you could take a box and have it put in so you could maybe keep it for later or get...
Yeah,
it's a little takeaway. Did you ever have a college meal? Or was yours
meals came in my second year. So in my first year, we didn't even have the Piazza, okay, on Heslington. I'm assuming you're Heslington.
Oh, you didn't?
Like East.
Oh, you've assumed right. You could have.
Okay.
Ooh, that could have been dangerous
it
there.
Could have been either way there. Yeah, but no, that building wasn't even built. NISA and all of the shops on that campus weren't built in my first year. They're very new, so no, we didn't have college meals. They came in my second year. But even though I lived on campus in my second year as a returner, you don't get college meals as a returner. So.
Oh right.
I don't. Oh. Because it's just,
I'm not sure why.
I think it's just for like all the new people, and I think they might have done it now where you just pay extra on the rent, but because it was like the first year they were doing them, they didn't do them for us, so I never had that experience. The only thing I've ever had in that similar vibe is for Refreshers Week in like January. They do like a big college meal then. But I remember when I had mine, I was sitting with like my head of college, his wife, their kids, and like 3 people from my flat. And then there's so much wine on this table because none of them drink, and obviously all there's children there. And then we're sitting there like, well, we really, really want to have the wine, but there's children present, so I really don't think we can. And it was just the most awkward meal of my life. But that's the only experience I have of it, really.
Just knocking back glasses of wine.
On the DL, yeah.
How do you get into that situation where you're sat with those people? Like,
it was because I was the photographer for the college at that time. So because that was like an official college event, I had to take photos of it. And I think they were just like, oh, we'll put you like on the edge with them so you can get up and take photos. It's easier than just being in the middle of the room. And then I dragged like half my flat to come and sit with me. And then I just didn't realise I'd be
just for a bit of
bands,
just for a bit of moral support.
But I just didn't realise I'd actually be sat with the head of college and his family. But you know,
it's an experience
memories.
to have.
Yeah,
that's what it's all about, memories. Oh, cheers. Another thing that I thought I'd mention about like little tips that maybe help my uni experience is batch cooking. I feel like batch cooking is so useful. I was terrible at cooking. I'll talk about this in the last episode, but I was absolutely atrocious at cooking to begin with. But I was like, you know what? I'm gonna figure this out, and I'm gonna do it right, and I'm gonna eat well. But yeah, like I definitely recommend if you learn some basic recipes and then make a hell of a lot of it, and then just freeze bits. It's like super fast, like 5-minute meals on the go. It's so useful. Do you think the same?
I do think the same. I mean, I'm also awful at cooking. So like, I'm just like, we'll make it for the day and see how we get on. So I never really did the batch cooking thing. All of my housemates did, and I literally used to look at them in almost envy thinking, God, I've got to cook and you're just banging this out. So it's definitely something that's like really beneficial to do. I just had like a meal plan, which I also think is like worth doing, where I just kind of said like, if I buy these ingredients, what meal's going to have when and how much will they do? So then I know what I've got in the fridge and freezer without going to have a look, and then I can decide like orders, especially fresh food, like what's going to go off when and what meals I'm going to have when. It makes life easier, so I did that.
A meal plan sounds like a good idea.
Yeah.
I was terrible at fresh food, like keeping it and not remembering that it'd gone off.
You're like, bit off.
Oh dear.
It'd be fine.
It'd be all right, yeah. It's like, oh god, so much fresh fruit that I just veg that I just ate that had clearly got off.
Yeah.
But I feel like that happens so much.
It's the student way.
It's the student way. It just is. Like, if it don't make you ill, it's fine.
Exactly. It's like you can't justify throwing it away because you're just like, oh, it pains.
No, I know.
Yeah.
It's money. It's money that you've had to spend on that, and you don't want to waste it. But I'll throw in with one last one, and then if you've got one to add on at the end that you've thought of, then I will pass it to you, and if not, we'll just go and move on.
Okay.
But something that I found, it's a bit of a twofer. So there's two. It's cleaners, because I feel like there's a bit of a love-hate relationship with cleaners.
Yeah.
But I'm going to fight their corner. I'm going to fight their corner a little bit. And also the sort of shared bathroom versus ensuite, because I feel like when you're picking your university accommodation, it's like the vast majority of the decision is based on the bathroom. Like, even
though you spend less time there, right?
Yeah. It's like, will it be shared or ensuite? And it's like, you can really tell a lot about a person if they, really care about whether it's ensuite or shared.
So what were you?
In terms of cleaners, I was shared because I was not bothered about paying extra for the ensuite. And I heard a lot of funny stories about cleaners coming in unannounced to ensuite bathrooms with like people laying in bed without clothes on and then just coming in. So I've heard a lot of those.
Yeah.
Did that happen to you?
Yeah, it was awful.
Was that fun?
Yeah, it was such a delight. Yeah. But no, I was ensuite, so I think, a bit of the divide there. But the cleaner thing was like at the end of term 3 in my second year, because I stayed on, and I was just like, remember we had like exam celebrations and stuff like that, and I was like, just gonna relax for a few days, but then I forgot to like bolt lock my door, and I kind of left it open, and I'm the world's heaviest sleeper. Once I'm out, I am out. That is it. And I just remember like going and sleep, and thankfully I was like fully onto the covers and stuff, but then I just remember like vaguely hearing in the distance just somebody like, someone like pottering around, and I was like, what even is that? And then I like shot up and looked, and like it leant into my bathroom, and I just saw some guy on his hands and knees just like doing the bath, and I was like, oh god, that's it, under the covers, just pretend like that didn't happen.
You're not here.
And then he was like, I didn't even realise you were here, you were so quiet. And I was like, I'm gonna hope that's true, and let's just move on. Don't look at me, let's just move on. But yeah, no, I feel like that happens a lot, like, embarrassing, but awful. Yeah.
Cautionary tales,
exactly,
as I said at the first.
Bolt lock your doors. Always. Yeah.
I mean, just general like safety as well. Just like not that it's a dangerous place, but
exactly.
Like, locking your doors is always. We're not in Canada, guys. Come on.
Exactly. Someone might just wander in. I've had my flatmates do that as well. Just like wander in, and I'm just sitting at my desk, and I'm like, hello. Like,
it's like, what do you want?
Yeah, it just always makes me jump as well, because I always have headphones on when I'm working, and it scares the living daylights out of me. So I feel like this third year I've learned, lock the door so I can save my soul and not have a heart attack.
Exactly. Yeah. My policy is a bit different to yours, I think. My policy was always open door. So I had a little door wedge, and I'd always have my door open whenever I was in, because I don't know, something about it, I just didn't like the idea of being isolated in my room. Like, I wanted to have that sense, even though it's very like surface level, I wanted that sense of like being available, being open, like if people are walking by or want to say hi or just come in, and and then a byproduct of that, because I play guitar, and I played guitar quite a lot when I was in my room, a byproduct of that was when the cleaners were there, I'd sometimes play my guitar, and sometimes the cleaners would comment on it. And I didn't realise how much of an effect it had actually had until the last day of university when I was moving out, when this one specific cleaner turned up, and my mum was there with me to help me tidy up. And she came to the door and said, I'll never forget it, she said that she'd loved listening to my guitar every time she'd come in to clean, and that she'd specifically stay there for a few minutes longer just to keep listening before moving on to the next flat. And I was like, oh my God.
Rave review.
Yeah.
I didn't know whether it was that way it was going to go then. She could have easily just been like, what a racket. So glad you're moving out. Yeah, but good for you.
I didn't think about it like that. Yeah. She could have just come to the door and be like, I am so glad you're leaving.
Yeah.
You are the worst person I've ever met.
You've made my job hell for the year every time I come to this flat. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't playing heavy metal at like 11.
Was it a bit of like Wonderwall?
Yeah. Oh God.
Going into that cliche guitar player.
Yeah, definitely cliche. Like just playing Wonderwall and Live Forever, Never Look Back in Anger, or Don't Look Back in Anger. Sorry.
Yeah, a bit of Ed Sheeran.
Just playing all the classics. Yeah, a bit of Ed Sheeran.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was quite a heartwarming moment, I felt, and it was completely unwarranted. Like they didn't have to come and say anything.
But it is those moments that are like,
yeah,
they stick with you more than if you've asked someone what they think and then they tell you, you know, because they've volunteered that information. It means so much more.
It was completely unsolicited, so it was very pleasant to have them come up and say that. And because of that, it's sort of influenced me to treat cleaners with, you know, a bit more respect. But like, you hear a lot of stories about them slacking off in the kitchens, and especially now I've heard some stories on Your Fest and things, the non-racist Your Fest, that cleaners are like sitting in people's kitchens, because obviously there's some people are still living in accommodation because they either can't get back home if they live abroad, and then these cleaners are like sitting in the kitchens not cleaning and just talking, or you know, and that can be quite a strange situation.
Live and let live.
It can be quite a strange situation.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe that's just more of the times that we're in now, but especially when I was on campus for the 2 years, all the cleaners were lovely. Did a great job. Yeah. Especially the state the kitchen was in half the time. You know? Creds to them.
Yeah, I agree. Like they need a bit more love, I think. That's what we're all about on this podcast, giving it the truth and you know, sticking it to power.
Exactly.
Before we move on, do you have any last bits of tips or things that people could use? Or anything that you've experienced that maybe made it really good?
I think my main one, and it's more for the academic study side of things, is just having some way to keep yourself organised. I experimented so much through my 3 years of to-do lists, having note boards, having like big different types of ways to like track it, having a schedule, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, find the one that works for you. Like the amount of times I had like daily to-do lists, weekly to-do lists, monthly to-do lists, and it's like copying, but like each one off each other, having a big like whiteboard, having it on. And then I ended up in the end just having like a weekly schedule, but just doing like, you need to do these 3 things every Monday, and that's fine. And if you don't do them, you don't do them, you can move them to Tuesday. Having something flexible that works for me, but like having something there to remind you of all the stuff you need to do each week, whether it's classes or societies or just stuff that's on.
Yeah.
Honestly, saved my life so much at uni.
You found that worked for you?
For sure, definitely. Because I think you want to be, especially when I started uni, I was like, so much I want to do. Like there's literally so much I wanted to try and do. And there's just not enough time in the day. So you need to plan it out to figure out, can you be signing up to 5 societies and do them every week?
Oh, yeah.
Or can you not, you know?
I mean, that is the classic, like going around Freshers' Fair and you sign up for like 7 societies. And it's like, I'll do it. It's like...
I was like, skydiving? I could go skydiving. Like, honestly.
Just fully reinventing yourself everything. At uni. It's it's brilliant.
It's like, I could be the next James Bond. We'll do all this fun stuff.
Absolutely. I mean, the only thing that I can really think of that I did in terms of like scheduling and trying to like organize myself was using Google Calendar a lot. I found that was useful because it links across to like lots of different things, and you can just automatically like input events and things. But in terms of like weekly schedule, I did just go by the seat of my pants quite a lot. Like it was it was like
fair enough.
It was. I mean, I'm not saying that it worked or that it. I think it definitely contributed to a lot of stress that I experienced in some situations. But yeah, I don't think I did any specific like proper schedule. But I
think.
Yeah, what were you gonna say? Sorry.
I was going to say, I think because for law as well, we have loads of contact time in the first 2 years. So we had like 20 hours a week of contact time. And it was just a case of, when are my classes? I have no idea. Like, I had so much going on.
Yeah.
And then with like YouTube sites and everything on top. And it was just a case of so many different places to be. That's kind of the essence of what it was, and then it became hobbies were put in there and all of that. But I think a lot of other courses, where some courses I know had like 4 or 5 hours a week, you kind of know it because it's the same every week, so you might not need to schedule that in, just fair enough.
I can understand why your process worked quite well then. So I'd say in that case, if you are in a situation where you have a lot of contact hours, maybe putting together like a more detailed schedule would be a good idea. But I definitely integrate it with doing like a Google Calendar thing, because personally that worked for me, because you can slot in a lot of the society stuff that you're doing in and around it as well.
And you can also upload the university timetable onto
you can.
well. So it saves you doing it all.
That was a blowing confusing time trying to figure out how that worked. I was like, you got to draw a link from where and paste it what? Like what? just like, what am I doing? Oh dear. But that is very useful. Like if you can get that sorted, it goes all on your phone. You can get like an app, and it just sends you alerts as well, and you can set up alerts for before you go to lectures. Because if you're a person that sits in bed and waits till like 5 minutes before it starts, then these alerts can sort of help you get into a better routine, a more productive routine.
Was that you?
No, it was not me. I only missed a few. Like I'm quite pro lecture. I'm quite pro going to lecture.
Oh, yeah. See, all of mine in law were recorded, so a lot of the time, especially after second year, I kind of learned that I can do them better at home.
Fair enough.
Pause it, have my cup of tea, do what I want to do, rather than sit there like, ooh. But so I just watch them at home rather than went. But I suppose it depends whether they're recorded or not. Yeah,
some of mine weren't, and there was a thing going around my department where they were forgetting to record some as well, and then we had a massive argument about that, about like getting them to do it. So there was a bit of more of an incentive to actually go in person, just in case it wasn't recorded. But yeah, I think before we move on, I think like a good tactic is maybe go to the lecture, don't make so many notes, but pay attention more to what he's saying and make notes about that, and then go home and then watch it again, and then fill in any gaps. Because I saw some people doing that, and that seems like a good tactic.
Because I always with law, we get the pre-reading before, so I would do the pre-reading, go on the slides when they were released, write down, because the key info is really on the slides. He would just then waffle on about the background to it.
Exactly.
But write down all the key info that you'd need for the assessments or whatever, and then when I'm in the lecture, I can really just take in what they're saying, because I have that foundational base knowledge.
Yeah.
And because you have notes before you go in, I could just slot stuff in where I wanted. So that's kind of my method to the notes.
Yeah, I'm glad. We've had some great suggestions there for things that made the uni experience better, and I hope if you did, tag along to listening to some of those, that they are actually helpful. I think they will be. So I'm going to move it on to talk about, you made a video on your channel which I vibed with quite a lot, I'm not going to lie. It was an honest, brutal review of the University of York. Now, I looked at it and I, really vibed with some of the points you raised, and I wanted to provide my take on it and also get your opinion on some new ones that I've tried to think of. But it is influenced by your video, so all creative responsibility, all creative respect goes to you. But it is basically to run you down about what it is. It's where we just basically have a chat about things that aren't so good about the Uni of York. And I mean, we're going to be hearing about this from the perspective of a law student and the law department. But just literally across the road, across the courtyard, is the Department of Film and TV, which is where I study. So we're going to get that. Hopeful, good split opinion, split experience. So the first one that I thought was really key, and I've got quite a good story to go along with this as well that I think you'll find interesting, is the amount of time it takes to get feedback on assessments, which you sound like you've had one of the worst experiences that I've ever heard about this, which I'm shocked about. I can't believe that even is allowed to happen. But the average is supposed to be, for my department, it's supposed to be about 5 or 6 weeks. You said that it was for you about 6 to 8 weeks.
It was more, yeah, and that was a good turnaround.
That was a good turnaround.
8 weeks, yeah. So there are assignments that I submitted in my first year, in my second year, and in my third year that I still do not have feedback for.
How does that happen?
So, I don't know. And for some of them as well, they would be like, we're going to do generic feedback, which consisted of about 4 sentences encompassing the whole year's essay.
Yeah.
And then just like a few key bits. And I'm like, I've written 4,000 words. That's not really helpful.
It's not helpful.
No, and it would be really annoying. So yeah, I think that's mainly probably specific to the law department.
Yeah.
But I think it was really annoying for me that they were meant to do like a 28-day policy. I don't know if you had that in your department. It was like a university-wide.
It was
thing.
A university-wide thing. Yeah, they came out that it was going to get feedback within 28 days. I think my department did quite well on that, but it sounded like yours didn't.
No, I think the first essay we got back after that was introduced, we got it within 28 days, and then everything since for the last 18 months of my degree, no, like we never got it.
They showed willing.
Yeah, well, yeah, for a little bit.
For a little bit.
And there's literally a module I did in my third year that I did in my first term of my third year, and then the lecturer was like, yeah, I'm going on research leave, so I'm just not giving feedback. And he just never gave feedback for any of the module.
Like, what is the point?
Like, oh, cheers, mate.
What are you there for?
I know, I was like, oh, it's so annoying. But that's, I think, yeah, the attitude summed up of the law department, really, which is such a shame.
Yeah, it is a bit of a shame. But my experience of it is really quite unique, I'm not going to lie. Because in my second year, you have to do these things called filming projects. And they're sort of like a production where you write it, you produce it, you direct it, and you take it all the way through to the end, and then you have a finished film. On the build-up to that, obviously, you get partnered or you choose people that you want to work with, and the department puts together a schedule with which you find out when you're going to be filming and when you're going to be working with people. Now, the department's schedule was, in a word, problematic and didn't work for anyone. I think the percentage that it worked for was something like 40 or 50%, that it didn't create some sort of, issue with timings or people not being able to work with who they wanted, or, it just wasn't very good. And now the student representatives for the department, in their own volition, decided to team together and create a new schedule that would hopefully work better for all of the students. And this new schedule worked for about 95% of everyone on it. Like, they'd managed to organise it so that everyone was able to nearly do it with who they wanted. And they got all the students in the department, in the year group, to sign off on it, to say that it had the whole support of the. They
did the legwork then for this.
Yeah,
they full on went for it.
They went for it.
Them, yeah.
Because we all were really stressed about the project anyway. And then the idea of this schedule being completely unusable was just like too much, really. So we got all the signatures for it, and they submitted it in. Now, this woman that was running it, I'm not going to name her name, because I think it's not right to name people when it's something negative. But she took a few days to respond, but her response was legendary in the sense that it was just completely obtuse, and she was just so defensive. She basically labelled the new schedule as fake news and accused us of spreading misinformation that could damage the important order of the assessment, and basically completely threw out the schedule that had been written and decided to keep the one that they'd written. Now, it gets better.
So bizarre.
It gets better because it then further turned out that she'd made choice comments in private to other department members that were particularly self-destructive. Things about...
Always the way.
Yeah, it was quite a lot of negative press. I was stood outside of my supervisor's office waiting to go in, and he was having an argument with another member of staff about her comments, and it was proper department beef. This is really going off. But yeah, she'd made some quite choice words that a lot of people were offended by, and it ended up being a result that she took a few months leave or something. She still works for the department, but she took a few months leave. And I felt like, oh, I know the gossip, like, because I heard the arguments. I was like, oh,
I know why. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so weird though. Like, you did her work for her. She could have just said, "Cheers, I will do that one."
Yeah,
The new schedule. And
by the sounds
so
of it,
weird.
she was insulted that people had tried to do her work for her. She was insulted that she hadn't been given enough help by the rest of the department and like the department head,
Yeah.
which
I
apparently
get that, I suppose.
which apparently was a case that she hadn't asked for help, and the head of the department, in his view, would have perfectly given her help if she'd asked for it. But basically, what she did was do it, make a mistake, accuse the entire department of being fake news, and then accuse the department of not helping when she didn't ask for it.
Yeah.
So it was a bit like she's just firing at anyone who can help, really.
Yeah. I just have like a Donald Trump in my head being like, fake news, like the whole time.
Oh, our department
And that
memed the
sort of
hell
sums
out
up
of it.
the vibe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our department, our course group chat it has fake news in it as part of the title because it was just so funny that she said that in an email.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah, but
Oh wow.
it's just, you never know what you're going to get when you join a department. But I don't think anyone anticipated
don't.
that it was going to be that intense.
Yeah.
So I mean,
Definitely the same for my department for sure.
yeah.
You never know what they're going to be like, but on the whole, they're good. You know.
On the whole, absolutely. There's a few
Yeah.
points I'm gonna make later on in this, where I shower them with praise. But yeah, assessment feedback. It is quite it's touch and go. Like, it could be within a decent amount of time, and it could be for months and months and months, or years in your case. But I think another thing that really can cause it to be so delayed is the fact that for my department especially, a lot of these lectures are spread across multiple modules, and because of that, they have to mark the assessments for all the modules that they're a part of. And this is just my opinion, and obviously, of course, I don't have like actual facts that this is what takes place, but you can imagine that if you're a lecturer having to mark the same number of essays for 2 or more modules, then that instantly doubles the amount of feedback that you have to do in what is effectively the same amount of time. Because if the module assessment day that you have to submit it is the same day as another module, which I've had done many times, where there's like 2 or 3 assessments due in on the same day at the same time, that means that the feedback results then have to be from the same 28 days or whatever for all of those modules.
Exactly.
And then whoever's doing that has to do 2 or 3 times as much work to get those feedback results in.
Yeah, and it just makes it more unlikely that they're actually going to stick to that
Yeah.
time frame.
Yeah.
I can't say in law that we ever had something on the same day due, but then I don't know whether, because I know for a lot of the time, first years would say do something on a Wednesday, second year's Thursday, and we would do on the Friday or something like that. It'd be 2 or 3 deadlines in the same few days.
Yeah.
So suppose in that respect, the same lecturers would have like within 1 week 400 essays in, and it's like great. But I think the law thing is we don't have really assessments in first and second term, especially for the first 2 years. You get one at Christmas and one at like Easter, and then you have like 15 to do over third term.
Oh, it's
and we
exactly
don't get
the same.
Teaching in third term.
Yeah.
Is it exactly the same?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's like spread them out.
Spread them out. That's what I was going to say. Like, things that they can do to fix this is spread it out a bit, even by a few weeks. You then give the lecturers enough time to get through a chunk, and then when the next module assessment comes in,
enough time.
yeah, and then it comes in. But of course, like exactly what you say, like you get no assessments or barely any written assessments for like the first 2 terms, and then I wrote in third term, in the term that's just gone, about 25,000 words of assessments, all for one, all for the 4 or 5 modules that we had assessments for. And it was just intense. It was just like maximum burnout.
Literally, yeah.
And
awful.
Yeah, it's. I wish they would spread it out a bit better. But that might be something that changes. You never know. It changes all the time with this 28-day policy. It did kind of improve my department personally because the feedback gets a bit, a bit more prompt. But obviously, as you say, the law department and people going into the law degree might want to bear that in mind with York, that it perhaps can take a little bit longer.
A lot longer.
Yeah,
yeah.
and if you rely on that feedback to properly improve, from one essay to the next, that can be a bit of a bit of a worry.
For sure, it's a big pain, especially like in my third year. What was so frustrating about the module that we were never getting feedback for is that essay style was very similar to one that we had to do the next term. So if we had had feedback, we could have directly used it.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's so annoying that when it's so delayed, like we would get probably an essay and then have like we'd do 5 before we get the feedback from that first essay. So it's like if you mess up that one essay, you've messed up half your year, you know?
Exactly.
But I think, you know, yeah, it is annoying, but there's other ways you can go around it. Like a lot of the times in my first 2 years, I used to go to like my PA, my personal advisor, and just be like, help me. I haven't got feedback. We all know we're not getting feedback for a while, like, and just get them to go through it and see if there's anything they could spot and things like that.
Yeah.
So there's ways around.
How did you get on with your PA? Was that something that you found a useful tool, or was it more just he's completely useless?
No, I mean I had 2. So my first year PA, not great. He was just very, in the politest way, like the image of what you think like a Cambridge, Oxford lawyer would be, like a bit pompous, not really in touch with the students. And it was kind of annoying. He would just be like jetting off here, there and everywhere all the time. And he'd be like, what's your name? And I'm like, I've seen you for a whole year, but okay. And so I swapped at the end of first year, and I was like, I physically, I can't vibe with him. I remember when I went to him and said, I was having a bit of a breakdown about, I don't want to do law, I'm having a whole thing, don't know what I'm doing. And he was like, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. Anyway, bye then. And I was like,
God, coming out with
cheers.
some Mr. Miyagi quote or something.
I remember I sat there and I was like, but what does that mean? Like, it was so, like, it just made it worse. So I was like, do you know what? I need someone that I can actually have like some form of connection with. And then I swapped. And in my second and third year, the PA that I had was great, like no faults.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, my current PA
Well,
is absolutely fantastic. Like, he's a guy called
That's
Ed
good.
Brayman. He's very, very intimidating, but in a good way.
Okay.
He makes you work hard, and you ultimately gain a lot from working hard, and you want to like impress and do well when you're working with him. And he's a really like trial by fire kind of guy. Like, he just goes straight in with
Yeah.
it, and you learn a lot, and it's a lot of like really intense work, but it's some of the most rewarding times that I've had. And he's a great PA. He's a great PA.
That's good.
I do respect him
It's
quite
good
a
you've
lot.
had that.
Yeah.
It's like almost like a little mentor there to help you along the way, yeah.
Definitely a little bit. It does help that my department is probably a bit smaller than yours, like in terms of the number of students that come in. I think there's only like 65 people in my year.
Oh, wow.
So
Yeah, it's about 200 in my year.
yeah, it's easier for us to make more personal connections with our supervisors. I'd say. Do you think that's
Yeah.
do you think that's an element of why it might be a little bit harder for departments with larger students to really connect with your supervisor?
I do think so, because I didn't even know half the people in my year until they turned up for an exam. So if I'm with the people every day and they're with 3-year groups, it is harder for them to actually know people. You've got to like memorize 600 people's names, you know?
Yeah.
It is a lot harder to do that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think they can make the effort if they want to, but I think it's down to the person. A lot of the lecturers think are overworked, so they have other stuff going on outside of the department, and it's like that may not be a priority for them to like PA or things like that. But you know, I think it depends on the lecturer, but there is definitely a way that they can do that.
Do you think supervisors are actually, because I've seen a few scenarios of people come into supervisors with like maybe a mental health issue or maybe a worry. Do you think the supervisors are actually there to help and actually do something, or do you think it's more just they're a conduit for go call this number or go speak to this person, or you know?
I think they are very much there just a signpost, because I had some stuff go down and I went to my PA as my first port of call, and really, I mean, they're there to listen, but whenever you're like, well, what do I do then, or like want anything further than just, you know, someone to listen, they literally just signpost you, like, just go speak to that person or that person, that person. And sometimes that can feel a bit like you're just being pushed off to other people, and you just want to have some sort of interaction with them, especially if you have them over the years. You want to speak to someone that you know, and that you have that connection with, rather than a complete stranger in the university, you know, main university building somewhere. But I think it also depends on the PA and their style of PAing and supervising. And
are you I'm going to move on to talk about some of the problems that you faced. Are you comfortable to talk about it?
yeah, why not? If it's in a YouTube video, then we can talk about it.
It's more to just give people an experience that perhaps isn't always talked about.
Exactly.
An experience that doesn't shed, in some ways, a positive light on the uni experience. And I think it's important to cover, and I think it's important that you've spoken about it on your own channel. So I was hoping you would be comfortable to talk about it. And I only did a small amount of research into it, but could you explain what happened? And
Yeah, I mean, basically, so in my second year, I was sexually assaulted, and it went over the course of quite a few months. So then when I came into third year, I kind of had digested what had happened and was like, do you know what? I kind of want to report it. And it was a long-winded story about how all of that came to be, but that's generally the gist. And then the whole reporting process was a bit more traumatic than it needed to be. Just because I feel like the uni didn't necessarily handle it the best.
I have a bit of an issue about the way the uni handled it, to be honest. Does it worry you now you're graduating, and maybe because you were a student ambassador as well, and I was going to talk to you about that. Does it maybe worry you that you've almost missed an opportunity to apply some change that you could have maybe implemented?
Yeah, it does, but at the same time, I'm sort of pursuing that route anyway of change and talking to the uni and trying to get some positive change out of it. So hopefully that I'll be able to do that even though I'm graduating. But it is, it is frustrating that they handled it in that way. And I'd like to believe that this can be a learning curve for them.
Yeah.
So it doesn't happen again. Because I can't imagine this, well, I'd hope that this type of thing isn't that common anyway. So maybe it is just, they're not used to dealing with it. But
yeah. I'd hope it's not that common either. It worries me that it sets. I mean, I obviously don't know how they handle things now. I'd hope they change things. But do you think it maybe sets a bit of a negative precedent that the university is judging people that are victims of these sorts of assaults, that it's easier to just bump them off and not focus on it, because the guy or the person who was responsible, by the sounds of it, didn't face really any repercussions. Was that true?
No. Yeah, pretty much. If anything, I was the one that suffered from the, I guess, not punishments, but the university sort of doing things to me more. Yeah. So like in terms of, you mentioned before, I was an ambassador, we were both ambassadors, and I got kicked off basically being an ambassador, and he got to stay on. And
that's mental.
It was very, and it was a very hush-hush thing. It was just one day I stopped being emailed about the ambassador stuff, and I remember emailing back being like, there's loads of, work opportunities I've missed, and that was one of my sole incomes as well, so it was quite more just like salt in the wound for me that I've lost a job as well.
Yeah.
And when I emailed them saying like, why aren't I being asked about this type of thing, they were like, oh, I forgot. And then they kept leaving me off the emails. Then I mentioned it in person, being like, why is this still happening? They were like, oh, yeah, no, there's just not really any events right now. And then they'd literally be like 2 weeks worth of like open days and stuff that were happening. So even now, like the open days that happened in the summer just gone, like never got asked to do them. As soon as I reported it, pretty much then it was the whole year I was never asked to do anything ever again.
That's
so
shocking.
I think it's just, it's annoying.
Shocking. I'll move on in a moment, but one last question based on that. Is there any, I want to say, advice that you'd maybe give to someone who has gone through that experience? I don't want to like shun away from trying to seek help from the university itself, but I mean, as a personal experience, as someone who's gone through it and tried that route and it hasn't worked out, did you then seek any other avenues for advice, or was it, did you just leave it? Because obviously, as a person who went through it, would you advise someone still to go down that route of taking it up with the university, or are there any other avenues, like any of the helplines or outside independent groups that could have maybe?
Yeah, I think it really depends on the situation. Like, I didn't necessarily really want to go down the reporting route just because I knew that well, at the time, I lived with the person. They were doing my course. We were doing the ambassador stuff. It's like if I report it, it's going to blow up in more spheres of my life, and it could go badly in terms of, so that's why I necessarily didn't want to go full report and, go to the police or things like that. And that's why I chose to do the university. And I think I would definitely recommend people going through the university, and hopefully in the future they'll handle it a bit better. But I think it is just a case-by-case basis and depending on evidence. And that's one of the things that made me not want to almost come forward, that there was quite a bit of time that passed over the summer from when it happened to when I was like, no, this isn't okay. Like, I want to report it. And then that means that there's less evidence, and then it makes you sit there and think, well, but like, do I want to go through the ordeal basically of reporting it if it's not going to come to anything? And I think, the university, even if you don't want to report it, do have quite good like counselling services or people to talk to, like open door team, and they can point you in the other direction. So I think it is worth talking to them even if you don't want to report it, just to see what the options are for on a case-by-case basis, and then you can always pursue other avenues afterwards.
Yeah, but hopefully, of course, no one does have to go through that experience. But I mean, there are people who do come to university with very bad intentions.
For sure.
Which is, Thank you for sharing that, though, as well with me, because, I want to find out about the things that maybe the university doesn't want vocalised as much, and I think it's important that people know.
No, for sure, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about it on my own channel, just to say that it's not something you would necessarily hear people ever talk about, but it does happen. And that's to say that there might be other people at the university that's happened to who might just not want to come forward. So if they know that it is a regular thing, they might be more, keen to say to the university about it and things like that, just raising awareness generally,
Yeah, it's always a good thing to raise awareness, and hopefully someone will have heard that story, and maybe it might encourage them to try and do something or change something or make a positive movement in their life. I hope so. But we're going to move it on now to talk a bit about work experience and placements and all of that lovely stuff.
Light-hearted topic, yeah.
Yeah, get back to a bit more light-hearted, and just see how experiences differ. And I was going to do a placement at Elstree, the studios, because I applied just randomly out of the blue. I spent about 45 minutes writing my application, and got accepted to go. And oh god, it was shocking. I can't believe I actually got it. But that was supposed to be an Easter, and obviously it was cancelled because of coronavirus and lockdown and things. But the placement should be hopefully reorganised for the end of the year. Do you think, what I'm getting onto is, do you think people are going to maybe make that decision to not go to university at all this year and maybe try and get a placement? Or do you think it's going to be the opposite? Do you think maybe there's a lack of placements and maybe university is going to be the safe option?
I think it depends as well what field, because I know there are a lot of courses that you don't really need work experience in, you can just go and do, and I think people in those courses will just probably go straight to uni. But if you're doing more more practical things like law or medicine, people might want more hands-on. But then equally, I always think that if you've already got an offer for a university and you're going this year, it's a bit too late, isn't it? To have a year out.
Yeah.
So I think it's only the people who are 16, 17 that might think, I might push it a year, but then they still have time, so they might not. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it will impact, but I do feel your pain on things getting cancelled. I had loads of medical work experience lined up, and then Corona, they were like, you can't come to the hospitals.
It's that's it.
Yeah.
We'll see you later.
Exactly. So it
do you think?
Pushed me a year,
yeah. In terms of work experience as a concept, do you think it's you mentioned it does depend what you're trying to go into, but I feel like there's a lot of anxiety put around the importance of a placement and having a lot of work experience. When in my experience with my department, the whole or a large majority of the first year was dedicated to getting people onto the same level of in terms of information and ability, being such a practical course. That it felt that people with more experience were sort of treating it as oh my god, I've done this, I know what I'm doing, I want to just get on to doing. Do you think it's right that people have such a level of anxiety about maybe not having as much experience as the next person? Do you think it's important?
I think in situations like that where you need the experience for the course, I don't think it's as important, because by the end of that first year you're all going to be at the same level anyway, so it doesn't necessarily matter. It's just those people who have the work experience can know what they want to niche into faster, but then you'll all end up with that degree at the end of the 3 years in the same boat. So I think it matters. I think for courses that are like law, where from day one they're like, where have you worked? What experience do you have? You need to get a job in 6 months. Like, you need to push all the time. I think the anxiety is probably well placed. And I mean, it's a shame that it's like that, because people are very much pushed in from day one of doing law to a job for the rest of their lives. And it's like, they haven't even done a term yet, like, chill. But at the same time, I can understand that, because there's a lot of job markets that are so like saturated and stuff, that it's like you need to get your foot in the door early, and that's where the work experience comes in to help with that.
Yeah. Did you have a lot of work experience coming into your first year, or was it the opposite?
I had when I applied to uni, I had none, and then I got 1 week at a solicitor's firm. I think it was like 6 months before I went to uni, and I hated it. I hated every minute of it. It was awful. I remember having a little cry by the photocopier, just being like, why am I here? God. I hate it. It was real bad. It's so bad. Yeah. But other than that, I didn't have any, and that was arranged by my college, so I didn't actually apply to anything. I mean, I remember I sent out over the summer literally 200 covering letters and CVs to solicitors firms all around where I lived, and I literally got nothing back, because they were like, you're not 18 yet, so you can't take you, or you don't have a law degree yet, we can't take you. So it was a nightmare to get it, and I think with law it's very hard to get work experience before you even go into law. So a lot of people go into law with nothing, unless they have family connections and things like that. But it's getting it when you're actually doing the law degree. Like, I counted it up the other day, and I think I did over about 35 bits of work experience in my 3 years.
That is a lot.
So it's a lot. I know, it's a lot.
In loads of different places as well.
Yeah, like some law in terms of solicitor, barrister, more the CPS court side as well. Did marketing, film, media stuff, as well as civil service, banking, finance, everything.
God, you're like a model student.
Clearly,
you are.
I mean, I just trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I was like, I don't want to do law. What do we do? But because I said there's that push in the law department to like have a job and know what you want, and if you don't, you'll just kind of like have that added stress of like, what am I doing? So yeah.
My work experience building up to uni was very sporadic. I worked in offices and hated it. Yeah. Sort of decided that I don't want to work in an office ever, which probably won't work out. But I mean, like, work experience can be a useful tool to find out what you love and hate in a sort of like non-destructive way, because you're only there for a short period of time, and you're not really responsible for a whole lot.
You're not really doing much.
So I think it can be good experience for building a bit of confidence and maybe like an idea of what you want to do. But in terms of whether it's absolutely outright necessary going into uni, I'm gonna say no.
Yeah, no. I would agree. I wouldn't say it is that important.
No. The only, a lot of people in my department, going into first year, obviously you get a lot of people from lots of different spectrums. Some people having been on film sets already and they're not even 18, and it's like, and then some people literally have barely even touched a camera, but everyone has the same interest in wanting to try and do film and TV. And I just remember a lot of it, because it's quite competitive. A lot of it, you get the really experienced people just wanting to take all the control and wanting to do it all, and you get the people who then don't have as much experience getting sort of pushed to the side.
Yeah.
Which I did notice quite a lot. And all I'd say is, if you are going into a university degree with a lot of work experience, do be aware that first year is sort of trying to get everyone up to speed anyway. And then in my department, a lot of the real work and the real diversification in terms of roles and things that you get to do comes into play in the second and third year. And that's when a lot of people get to shine anyway. Which is, that first year is a lot of just trial by fire and trial by error and just making mistakes and figuring yourself out. So I would just say, just chill out and just enjoy it. It's a year of not really having to worry too much about the grades you get either. So
exactly. And I wish I made the most of it a bit more looking back. I feel like I was way too studious in my first year, and then I'm like, now doing the masters, I can't have this time off, this relaxing period. So definitely make the most of it doing first year for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I wanted to talk about working whilst at uni as well, because you obviously did the student ambassador thing, and was that your part-time job, or did you have various part-time jobs leading up to that, and then you settled on student ambassador?
Well, I mean, I did the student ambassador thing, and then I also had other ambassador jobs. So like, you know, and you're like an ambassador for like a company, you do their social media and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I did that quite a bit. I normally had about 4 jobs at one time.
At once?
Yeah, but then a lot of these ambassador
Christ.
jobs aren't every week. They're just like 5 hours a week here or whatever there. So
Right.
on the whole, it worked out to be like enough for like one part-time job, which was good. And obviously I had the YouTube and stuff on top. But yeah, no, I did quite a lot, to be fair. But I think the student ambassador jobs are good in that they are so flexible. Like, you can do the hours when you want to do the hours. It's very rare that you have an actual face-to-face commitment where you have to go somewhere at that specific day and time and, you know, do a talk or show people around or whatever it is. So it's good to have those sort of on the back burner because they're a good way to make money. And you can choose to decline them or not. You know?
Yeah. What was that experience like trying to balance those things? Because it sounds like you were doing a lot and a lot at once. Was it a positive experience trying to balance all that, or did you have days of just like, I can't do this anymore?
There were times when I was on top of everything and I didn't have like an excessive workload where I loved it, and I love being busy. I'm that type of person that if I sit here for like an hour nothing to do, I'm like, what we're gonna do, let's find something to do. And like even over the summer I was like, new goals, new hobbies, new things to work towards. So I do like being busy, so I kind of like that element of it. But as I said, there are times when you sit there and you're like, why am I doing this? Like, I'm literally burning myself out every term, and like, for what? Sometimes I'd sit there and think that. And I remember just being tired all the time. Like, every time we'd get a break, it would take me about 10 days of literally just sleeping to just wake up and then be like, oh, I feel normal now. Because I'd be having 4 or 5 hours sleep every night, like, throughout
That
term.
is rough.
It was all, it was bad. And I sometimes look back and I think I probably could have took it a bit more easy on the work experience. Like, I wouldn't say the amount of work experience I did was necessary by any means throughout your degree. It's just because I had no idea what I wanted to do. And when you get opportunities, I'm like, sure, why not?
just keep going. I mean, I respect the hustle, and I respect keeping, you know, yourself busy and things, but definitely getting like 4 or 5 hours sleep is going to hamper you more than it's going to help. So, I mean, this is obviously not a lecture.
No,
you should have got more sleep.
I know. It's the little student
learning
way,
curve,
you know? Yeah, for sure.
It's the whole student way. My experience of part-time work, I absolutely hated it because I chose to do Deliveroo, which I hated. It was proper like one of the worst mistakes of my life. And I only did it for like 3 weeks, but it still was just awful. And I want to do better. But yeah, it's not a very emotionally stable job, if you understand what I mean. Like, it's that whole thing about the gig economy, and whether it's not very stable because the hours are completely your own. Like, you have to try and get the hours rather than here's a set time you work, that sort of thing. It's I think the problem is it entices students because it seems like an easy job and a quick way of making money, if you know what I mean. But what it actually is it's a lot of just stress and anxiety, and you don't have colleagues, so you don't really have anyone to really like talk to when you're on the job. You know, it's like it's probably one of the worst jobs you could do as a student. And I think the university provides a lot more safe jobs and a lot more like pleasant jobs to do. So I would say, like, because coming to university, I think a lot of students' worries and issues is about whether they will need to have a part-time job or not. Vast majority is need to do it. But then that comes at a sacrifice of obviously enjoying the uni experience and getting the most out of it. Because I knew people from my first year who literally just lived to work, and then whatever free time they had, most weekdays at the end of their degree, like going to stuff at the department, they'd get straight into work clothes into town, and they're working like a 7 p.m. till midnight shift, or or like a whole night shift at a bar or pub or whatever. Do you think people should try and better weigh up whether they truly need to do work? Do you think it's better to try and get the most out of that uni experience if they can, or do you think it's just kind of like, money's always going to be an issue for students, and part-time work is a part and parcel of being at uni?
I think part-time work is definitely a part of being at university, but as you said, it is about weighing up whether it's worth the sacrifice. I think if you do jobs that kind of I did that are more flexible and you can do them on the go and whenever you want in your hours, that are more just like all my work involved me doing social media stuff, so it's not the same as like your work is you on a bike trekking around York in the rain, and so for me it was quite light-hearted, easy work to do, and that's why I like doing them. And I think jobs like that I'd recommend people to get because it's just easy money, but at the same time, like if you have to then get an actual job at a bar or like fast food chain, things like that, you have to block out 2 or 3 days a week then, and it's like, do you really want that commitment of you're not going to get your Saturdays and Sundays for the year? Like, you have to weigh that up, I think, because I remember I worked in McDonald's before I went to uni, and then I tried it a bit when I was at uni, and I was like, I don't like losing my weekends or losing a certain day a week. Like, I want the flexibility to do what I want when I want, especially when people are like, come and do this, come and do that, and you're like, well, I can't, and you feel like you're missing out. And I think if you have to be in that situation, maybe it's just better to like work over the summer, because I normally would just work like the 4 months full time over the summer, and then that would normally tide me through for the year,
right?
Like little bits on the side throughout the year. But I definitely think that a lot of people in my halls in first year had a year out before they went to uni and just worked for a year, and then they didn't have to have a job when they were at uni, and I think that is kind of a beneficial way to do it as well.
Yeah, I agree. I did similar to what you did, working in summer doing a job. I was in an office, and then it sort of gives you a bit of extra cash to maybe work, not have to work while you're at uni. I thought it might be a good idea if me and you both sort of sat down and maybe thought through some ways of maybe finding jobs or looking for local jobs. I've written down quite an extensive list. Okay. And if anything comes to your mind while I'm ringing through some, the first one that I thought was really good, and this is more like sort of department orientated job opportunities, is keeping up to date with the weekly newsletters that departments like give out, because a lot of good job opportunities and work experience can be found on those newsletters. Like interviews with keynote speakers and interesting people and opportunities around the York area. Or this applies to like any university. But do you agree with that? Like looking for your...
I completely agree. Yeah, like most of the jobs that I had that were based within the uni, whether it's working with your lecturers, doing research projects and stuff like that, were from the newsletter, and it's just a good way to find out what's going on, really. Yeah, I definitely recommend that's one of the first port of calls to go to. Awesome.
And another one that I think you're a bit of an advocate of is going to the careers department. Now, why is the careers department such a good place to go with, based on the fact that it's called the careers department?
Well, I don't have much experience with the main careers department at the university. I have a lot of experience with the law careers department. So we have a specified guy. He literally just does careers, and we call him Careers Chris. And basically, he just has all of the opportunities lined up, and he's the person that outside people contact. So he's very well connected in terms of past graduates and stuff that then go on to do certain fields, and then he keeps in contact with everyone. They have work experience opportunities, knows you to put in contact with, and he also knows a lot of the students. He knows what paths they want to go down, so if people are wanting to go in a certain niche area, and he remembers that if something comes up, he'll connect them with it. And he also he's just a guy with all the connections basically, and if you go to him, he'll be like, let me pull out my spreadsheet, and he'll know all of the people to talk to for what you want to do, and he's just very knowledgeable. So I just really appreciated him for that, especially when I would go to him and I remember in my second year I was like, so I want to do medicine, and he was like, oh, but then he still had people that would then gone and worked in the NHS and things like that who could then put me in contact with doctors, and so he knows everyone basically, and he's just good to put people in contact with.
Yeah, I'm going to second that. I mean, as you say, I don't have a lot of experience using the official uni careers department, but I've heard a lot of good things, that it is very useful. And I think, definitely go towards your department first with the careers advice, because obviously they're the people who are going to know the most, and they're going to have all the connections because you're speaking to people in industry and things like that. So yeah, careers department is another good option, I would say. Local businesses are always looking for new students because they know that these graduates are coming from York, or wherever you are. There's local businesses around. They know where the universities are. They know the students are, really keen to get work and to get relevant experience in whatever they might do. And it only takes like a short Google or just walking around the local village or the local city to just see what's there, and approaching people, being a bit out there and showing you've got a bit of forward-thinking attitude to approach these people. I think that can reap some good results.
Yeah, I agree. Networking is the way to go, really, for things like that.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of networking, the university and your department will quite regularly put on networking events, and there's a lot of careers networking events that happens across the university. So on top of keeping an eye on what's going on the uni message boards and things like that, and what USU are promoting, finding out the network events that are happening is also very useful, because you'll chances are you'll meet someone, or you'll speak to someone who might have some great advice, or perhaps even something to apply for.
Exactly. And even the careers portal though, on that thing, like our online database where all the internships are and everything there, like checking that regularly, honestly, is where I've got half my stuff from.
Exactly. That's what we want.
Yeah.
There's lots of useful resources that people can use that probably go overlooked, and I'd say they do go overlooked. But we're in the 21st century. It's 2020 now. One of the most useful things to use when looking for jobs and experience and people to contact, and it's how I've put together most of this podcast as well. So it's a testament to that. It's social media. It's getting online and speaking to people and finding out what people are doing and just communicating. Because you can find out what's going on not just locally but also around the world, and I think it's a fantastic resource when used correctly. A fantastic resource to bring people together and find out what's going on. And you must use social media a lot for when you're figuring out what you want to do, in terms of like YouTube and videos, and maybe doing collaborations and things like that. And it's a great tool, I think, for more professional. Yeah.
Especially things like LinkedIn, in more of the professional context of, you can talk to people on there doing your dream job, and then just talk to them and be like, what's it like? You don't have to go through the formal means of emailing and then trying to set up a meeting or going through a scheme. There are a lot of other ways where you can get the information and use social media to do that. And I think that's just really great. Keeps you connected with anyone that you want to be connected with, really.
Yeah, hound all of your top people on LinkedIn. Just hound them.
Be like, please talk to me. Yeah.
But I'm gonna mention like a few interesting ways, and I'm hoping that you'll have some things to say about this. Ways of approaching businesses and people that can catch the eye, make yourself stand out. A few stories that I've got. These are not personal stories. These are things that I've heard from people. One of them is funny enough. When I was getting my first tattoo, if you've ever gone to get a tattoo, the person doing it, obviously, you just sat there for a while, so you're going to talk for a bit. Yeah. Like, you're going to have conversation. And one of the things that he mentioned when he was tattooing me was that when he was applying for jobs in the media industry and like media marketing and things like that, one of the things that he advocated most of all was tailoring your CV to the place that you were applying. So some of the fun things that he did was he made his CV into a pizza box and made it so the layers of the pizza were the different layers of his CV and the different like cool, attributes and skills that he had. I don't know what it looked like because it's been like 2 years since I spoke to him. But he told me that with that sort of creative approach to applying to places and contacting people, he almost always got an interview wherever he applied for. Because it was just so obvious right off the bat that this guy was like super creative and like really on it with the social media and marketing and things like that, and he always got an interview. So that's something that I've been trying to do myself, like making interesting approaches to applying for jobs, because you get hundreds of people applying to these jobs, and if you can stand out just a little bit, you've got that extra edge. Have you seen any interesting?
I haven't seen any wacky ones like that, but I think that's because law is very straight-laced. I've seen someone did theirs once where they kind of did like a LinkedIn profile, but it was their CV.
Oh, that's great.
So they'd like laid it out like that, and that was quite cool, to be fair. But I think even with law, even though they are quite traditional, there is ways that you can set them out that is specific to law, that the law firms look for. So you can't just do a generic CV, and it is about tailoring it in terms of the content that you put, the work experience that you put, to tailor it for that role. That really does help you stand out.
It does. I saw this great one on LinkedIn. To be fair, it was this woman who'd applied for another like social media marketing role, and she was applying to Wagamama's. Right. And she'd basically designed her CV to look like a Wagamama's menu, and it was fantastic. It had like loads of little graphics and like loads of the meals, and like each part of her CV was written like a meal on the Wagamama's menu, and it was fantastic. It was so funny to read.
Really fun though, yeah, that's cool.
It's really funny, yeah. I don't think she ended up getting accepted for the job, which is harsh. But she posted it on LinkedIn.
You put in, yeah.
Yeah, she posted it on LinkedIn, and she got like quite a lot of engagement with it, because obviously that's not something you see every day.
Exactly.
Doing something so wacky like that. But
yeah, so I'm sure she got a job out of it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, someone will have approached her and been like, that is pretty cool. Like, do you want to work for us? Which just makes it seem like Wagamama's lost really more than anything.
Exactly.
But. We're going to be wrapping up this episode very soon, because I've taken quite a big chunk out of your day, but I just thought I'd close off the podcast with a little bit of a chat about any sort of... You do music, and this is something that I found quite interesting, that you used to do music on your channel or Facebook page, and I enjoyed listening to some of the performances that you did. Is that something that you're looking to continue doing? Would you ever pick back up the acoustic guitar? I've got one to my left here.
I would definitely want to do more music. I mean, I did it before because I was doing more creative subjects. So when you're around that every day, you know yourself that you're more prone to be doing your hobbies and things that you're engaged with. I mean, I'm like that anyway. But I do want to do more of it. It's just a case, it's not like I've stopped doing it. It's just like, It wasn't a conscious decision to stop doing it. It was just something that ended up happening. But definitely over this summer, I want to start putting more music out. And I'm like eyeing up my guitar over there thinking, I really want to get back with it.
You're looking at it now, yeah.
I'm thinking, like it was one of my goals for the next 5 years. I mean, I made a video like recently about that, saying like what I wanted to do, and one of them was to write an album. And even though it's not like to sell or whatever, it's just like for me, I want to have 10 songs that I'm super proud of and that they can record, put them on my YouTube channel, and then just like have that, burn it to a disc, put it on my shelf. Old school style, and then be like, I've done that,
You've done
so
that,
I've got about 6 on there, but I've probably written over 50-60 songs in the last 3-4 years.
Jeez.
I just don't share them anymore. I think that's what it is. Like I do it most weeks, I just don't.
It's just for you.
But I definitely want to get to a place where I can share it more. But I don't know how you are with your music, but especially me when I write it, I can write lyrics quite quickly, and I could probably write lyrics in like 10 minutes, half an hour max, right? It's then the music to it. So sometimes it's just not quite right, and sometimes I feel like I need to have the vibe, and you know yourself, like when you create something and you're like, that is exactly the vibe that I want it to be, and it sums up the sentiment and everything, and you know when it's done almost, whereas
you are your own worst critic as well, so
whereas there's some stuff that I'm like, it sounds all right, but there's something missing from it, and then I will sit on it for 2 years until I figure out what that something missing is.
God, you're dedicated. So, I'm getting that vibe from you that it's all about the long game. I think it is. Like a lot of the songs that I have shared this year, I wrote 3 years ago. So wow. Yeah. That's pretty impressive. I hope you manage to, finish that album and release it. Thank you. So do I. Yeah. That is quite a big project to undertake, but I'd say now more than ever is a good time to keep cracking at it, and you're eyeing up your guitar, and maybe after we finish this, you'll have to pick it up and I might, I just might. You should. I think you should. And then maybe see what's happening at university when you go back and you do your masters. You might be able to perform some of the songs live.
Yeah, because that's something I really wanted to do at university this time around. It just never kind of like happened. Because I think it was like Glasshouse or something in one of the campus bars at University of York. They had like an open mic night or something on that vibe, and I was like,
it's called
maybe.
Live Lounge. One of my mates runs it. And that's a project that he's like worked on and built up and made it a bit more snazzy. So shout out to Ben, well done. If you you should be proud of that. It's a great project.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah,
it's a lot of fun. But do you know of the Battle of the Bands at Uni of York? Have you ever heard of it? Or
no, what's this?
You never heard of Battle of the Bands?
I clearly live under a rock. No.
Well, yeah, it's basically like all of the wannabe like Oasis bands come together and try and win the best student band. It's a lot of just like if you love indie music, if you love just like people trying really hard to perform live and make a great music, and it's just a great community like experience. It's some of the best times I personally had at university performing live music with my band. Well, it's not my band, but it's a band that I play with. And yeah, it's a heck of a lot of fun. And there's a lot of, like gigging in general is just like you get so many wacky and weird stories from gigging. Yeah. It's hilarious. But absolutely, like Band Society. If you are going to join, in September at the Uni of York, Band Society is growing and it's getting pretty impressive. The Battle of the Bands last year, my band entered it to try and win, and it was a proper Oscars moment, where they announced the wrong band that has won it.
Oh my god.
So we were all stood
It's
there.
like, oh.
Yeah, I got way too invested in this competition.
Yeah.
And it was that like they announced the wrong band, and the wrong band they announced, like, no offense to them, they shouldn't have won it. Like, even if hypothetically they had won it, like I think a lot of people would have. Yeah. So when they announced the name, the room was kind of eerily quiet because no one really like cheered.
Voted.
Yeah. So it was kind of like, I felt so deflated when they announced that band won, and then like a few moments went by and I just heard the guy go, "Oh no, wait, sorry." I was like, "No, this isn't happening." But yeah, proper Oscars moment. And then they obviously announced that we had won, and just absolutely erupted in excitement. Which, that's what it's all about, and I definitely recommend if you're a fan of live music and you want to see some great people like yourself, like you will go on to do, which people should be excited about watching and discovering. Universities are some of the best places to find independent music and artists that can go on to be huge. Do you expect that you'll garner an audience at King's College London? Do you hope?
We can only hope, can't we? Yeah, but I don't know. I don't know whether I'd want to be the next like singer. I don't think
singer-songwriter.
I mean, do you want to go into the music scene, or are you sticking with film?
Oh no, for me, the real challenge about career paths is radio or film. They're quite similar, because a lot of people who do radio can end up going into TV and film and things like that. But yeah, that's where I'm at a crossroads. But music is a very challenging industry to get into, because you're either a genius and you make a great track that gets like 1 billion streams, or you just kind of don't. Yeah. And then it can be a great career to go into, and I would definitely do it with the opportunity presented itself. But in terms of, as you say, like we spoke about earlier in this episode, like the safe path is trying to make radio work or make TV work. So that's the hope. But we're going to be wrapping up very shortly. I mean, this has been a great episode, and it's been fantastic to talk to you, and you've had some great insights into, the uni experience as a graduate, looking back. Would you say it's through rose-tinted glasses in some ways, or are you sort of not really sort of affected by that, like looking back on stuff with, like a real fondness, or you?
I think think I'm too close to it at the moment. I think in maybe another year or two, when I've had more university experiences, I might be able to really know what my feelings are on it. But at the moment, I do look back on certain things, especially first year, and I like the best first year, great flat. Like, I do look at that and think, oh, like, we had such a great time. And I think you look back at that time as well, and it was like probably the last time I didn't have much responsibility and much going on, and you kind of miss that. But no, I'm going to miss my kind of York experience. I always feel like I'm coming back in September. Like, I don't feel like I finished, because I always feel like this type of vibe at the end of the year anyway. So for me, it's going to be weird when in like 2 years' time I'm like, I just didn't go back. Like, yeah.
I can imagine that a lot of people are going to be experiencing that, you know, you get used to doing something for 3 years. You kind of don't want it to end. You don't expect it to end. And then that realization that you aren't going back can be quite shocking.
I think as well, when I know quite a few people that are like in the years below me, when I see and hear things from them that are going to happen here, that's when I'm going to really be like, oh, I remember when I did that, or like this happened, or they're going to these clubs or whatever. That's when I'll think I'll miss it. Yeah, you remember back, and I'm assuming you'll have a lot of great memories of doing those things, and you know, it's good to hold on to those. Because unfortunately, university does eventually have to end, and we all have to start work. But unless you do, you know, PhD route.
Yeah.
Slap 7 years on it. And
is that another 7 years?
Yeah, just go full hog, you know.
At that point, I think you're just in denial, and you really don't want to just work.
Especially when you do like a degree, masters, you do the PhD, and then you go in to be like a lecturer at uni. It's like 18 for the rest of your life. It's just, you love that uni life, you know.
You gotta live it. But I'm gonna finish up now, and we're gonna end the episode. This is the second episode. Thank you so much for joining me and coming on to talk. It's been an absolute pleasure. I hope you enjoyed it.
I did, and thanks for having me. I've had a great time.
I'm glad you did. But you can find all the highlights on YouTube and Facebook. I'll be posting a varied bunch of things from this full episode. If you do want to watch it or listen to it in full, you can find it on all the streaming services like Spotify and Apple. So that's the place to look for the whole episode. I would very much appreciate it if you gave us like a big rating on Apple, because I know that's important. I'm still yet to discover why, but it's apparently important. So please give me a good rating on Apple Music. But yeah, plenty more episodes to come across the next few weeks, and hopefully you find something useful in those. And we'll see you again then. Goodbye.